So Europe gets obviously lots of documented evidences, and maybe language is an advantage in the scientific literature as to why Europe may get discussed more than other cultures. Eastern cultures have been around just as long and sometimes longer, but documents and languages often become an issue in terms of how they are considered and reported. And we looked at one aspect of evolution from the Asian viewpoint, for example. But coming to Europe before the Romans, you can look again at the amber trade routes in Europe and to Mycenae, which we talked about before. The northern coastlines were the primary sources for the Baltic amber route. Here, amber was being passed southward to the Mediterranean by the time Mycenae came to power. So you can see the Stonehenges mentioned here and the various arrows we saw before, but now looking at them again in the context of Europe before the Romans. But looking at the timing of 13th century BC here, 12th to the 10th century BC in these bluish colors, and the green color covering the larger area of 10th to the 8th century BC, extending into what we called Anatolia before and the present day Italy. We have the Balkans and Hungary and Tyrol identified here, and we have we should be Hallstatt coming up soon somewhere. So this is the present day Macedonia, Peloponnesus, and so on. This is a map which shows the distribution of the Hallstatt Iron Age cultures in this shaded area, expanding quite far from Hallstatt all the way into the Iberian Peninsula. This happened during the 8th to the 5th century BCs, and again you can see the spreading of the Iron Age cultures along these routes. And the Europe 3500 to 3500 BC to 2500 BC, while extreme western and northwestern Europe remained the territory of stone using farmers, so Stonehenge right there. Copperworking spread in Central Europe, and Bronze Age came into use, or bronze came into use in Southwest Asia and peripheral regions. The building of communal tombs was widespread in the West, but more mobile lifeways developed in Central Europe and on the eastern steppe. This new pattern expanded into surrounding areas. So independent evolutions of innovations, technologies, cultures were obviously also related to natural resources and climate. But the trading would have homogenized or allowed for exchanges of innovations and materials and knowledge as well. So you can see that here as to how they may have been linked despite the distance. And by this time we had domesticated animals for carrying materials, goods, and so on. These are the bell beaker societies distributed over here during the 3500 to 2500 BC period of Europe. So it's a short look through Europe before the Romans. So let's summarize it as copperworking developed in southeastern Europe by about 4600 BC, and soon afterward in Spain and northern Italy. The new technology flourished because of a demand for fine metal ornaments, and this was just a logical outgrowth of earlier stone and ceramic technologies. So you can see how trading would have expanded to meet the demand. Copper's more widespread use coincides with the spread of beaker and battle axe artifacts throughout much of Europe, the map we saw here. Bronze working began at an unknown date but was widespread in what is now known as the Czech Republic by 2000 BC as a part of the Unitist culture. The trading networks of earlier times expanded to meet increased indigenous demand for metal artifacts during a period of rapid technological change after 1700 BC. Some wealthy chieftaincies developed in temperate zones. So the social complexification, hierarchy, wealth, armies, warrior class, etc., had already been in place. About 1800 BC, new urnfield burial customs and more advanced bronze working techniques spread over much of Central and Western Europe. So the urnfield culture is basically cremating the dead and putting their ashes in an urn and burying it. So this was quite widespread in Central and Western Europe. These were associated with an intensification of trading activity and greater social ranking, which resulted in an elite warrior class. After 1000 BC, ironworking techniques spread into temperate Europe and diffused through the Hallstatt and Latène cultural traditions during the first millennium BC. Okay, we'll come back and look at a couple of more civilizations, but move over to the Americas, the New World, look at Mesoamerica and the Andes before we finish with this book, People of the Earth. Okay.